is BCD's travel commitment and support of our chapter of GBTA, the Georgia chapter, and Education Month. So I'm delighted to say on our pre-call yesterday, Kathy has already committed to BCD travel support for next year too. So thank you, Kathy, and thank you, BCD Travel, for that. Kathy is a former agency owner who led the growth of her Ohio-based business from an annual turnover of $3 million to over $300 million. If anybody knows Kathy, you know that she has a clear understanding of business travel and what's going on in the industry. And not only that, but she's the Senior Vice President of the Americas for BCD Travel and the affiliate program as well. So she's a lady who wears many hats and is great at being forefront in the industry and with in the travel industry with our clients, and also she's no stranger to media. She's been asked to report on the Weather Channel. And most recently, and Kathy, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but she's become the travel guru for here in Atlanta for 11 Alive. And she most recently did a tips for fall travel, which was just fabulous. So Kathy, if you're okay with that, we'll share that link if anyone's interested in seeing it on our no pressure.
Oh my God.
We'll share that on our site. So it's absolutely great. So without further ado, Kathy, I'll turn it over to you to talk to us about looking in and getting some really great insight on the actual travelers on getting back to work and to business travel.
Well, Kim, thank you so much. And that was great. And again, as you all know me, travel is in my soul. I'm very passionate about this business and this career that has been fantastic to me over the many, many years that I've been involved. So I am so excited to be here with you all today. And I know initially I was going to talk about Know Before You Go, but there's a lot of information out there, and we actually have a website where we continue to update that. But I thought that I wanted to share with you, it would be more relevant to what's happening today in our industry, in the workplace, et cetera. And BCD has continued to be extremely committed to really, we're not making a lot of money, we're not booking a lot of reservations, but we are still out there in the forefront, investing in the tools and the technologies that are going to help drive our, customers forward. But we have committed to this research and innovation team that's part of our organization. And they've done ongoing surveys throughout this whole 18-month period, but most recently, they targeted individual travelers. And the whole purpose of that was to really try to figure out from that individual traveler, number one, what has changed within, are they traveling at all, or when do they expect to resume travel? So let's go ahead and dive into this real quick. So again, the goal was aimed to explore travel. You can click to the next slide there. There you go. The goal was to get with travelers who, get their insight, get their ideas, get their thoughts on new ways of working and traveling in this business segment. And obviously, we all know that it's been extremely impacted by the pandemic. So we really wanted to understand where their heads were. And so the survey itself resulted in 738 business travelers across the globe. And the survey was conducted July 6th to July 20th. And I'm not going to read the profile of the respondent, but that'll give you a little bit of insight into who these individuals were. So the first, you can go to the next one, Dwight. There you go. So the first question that we had was, we wanted to get some input on whether they were traveling at all, and what the status of their situation was. And I think this fits right in with the numbers and the transactions that we're seeing flow through our business. So again, 28% of the business travelers are back on the road. And I believe there's 6% that never stopped working for travel. So this all makes sense and fits well into what we've seen based upon what's going on. And I most recently have, I've been on 8 trips, 6 of which were business. And I can tell you that the last trip I took a couple of weeks ago, there were business travelers, not leisure travelers on that plane. And we certainly know that the planes are full. But a lot of that has been due to leisure travel more than business. But we're starting to definitely see an upward movement. Next slide. So then we wanted to really gauge when, if they weren't traveling, when did they expect to be traveling? And of course, I can tell you as an organization, we've been doing forecast over forecast to try to figure this thing out. And I think as we all know, things have not come back as quickly as we anticipated. I can remember last year thinking, when unfortunately we had to do some furloughs and things in March, we'll be back in May and then we'll be back in July. Well, here we are. And, while we've had some opportunities to bring some folks back, we're still, from a numbers perspective, in this pandemic crisis. It hasn't gone away. But 45% of those traveling employees expect to resume domestic travel, by the end of 2021. And what we have projected as an organization, initially we thought that we would be somewhere in the 80%, by the end of this year. And now we've changed those numbers to reflect what we think is more realistic, somewhere between 50 and 65% by the end of the year. And I'm fingers crossed, toes crossed, but I am seeing upward movement, and I am seeing that those numbers, hopefully will come to fruition by the end of the year. And of course, we all know what's happening with international travel. There's very little travel going on there because of the complexities with the quarantines and the vaccination requirements and et cetera. So only 14% of the travelers surveyed felt that they would be back at the end of the year with international travel. And I think we continue to see that. And I'm not optimistic that that's going to come back anywhere near the numbers that we're seeing on the domestic. I think that's still something out there that, hopefully it'll come back soon. But again, domestic is primarily what we're seeing in the marketplace. And then as it relates to people's willingness to travel, what is their motivation? What is their concern? So around 7 in 10 business travelers consider vaccination as one of the most important criteria. And then 8 in 10 report that quarantine, if they had to quarantine, that negatively affected them. And that definitely influenced on whether they wanted to travel or not. Next slide then. And then travel suppliers. So we asked, what were they experiencing issues with travel suppliers? And I think we all know that the airlines, for all the right reasons, had to reduce capacity. We're seeing the planes packed, but again, that's because of the reduction in capacity and the car rental crisis. I mean, let's face it, there were no cars. I know we're starting to see cars again. Hertz had gone into bankruptcy. They're now out of bankruptcy. But along with the lack of cars, we had the chip crises, et cetera, with getting the cars. Car rental companies had to do what they had to do to financially, impact their business. But we're going to see, as cars start to become available, you're going to see increases in prices. But what these travelers were most concerned about, was the opportunity to get out on the road. They did see the increase in prices, and they were concerned about the limited supply and capacity. But one of the things that they were least concerned about as it relates to the suppliers was the cleanliness aspect. And think about the millions of dollars, that our very own airline, Delta and United, American, they've all spent all of them have spent so much money in hotels, what they've had to do to really focus on that cleanliness. That was the least thing that they were worried about. So that was kind of interesting to see. And then we've all talked about this, I'm sure, within your own corporations, and a lot of my clientele, we're working with them and trying to do assessments of their current travel policy. But travel policy was also something that they were very interested in. And, the area that they highlighted, you can go to the next slide. Sorry, Dwight. Yeah, there you go. The areas that they felt were most important was the freedom of choice. simple approval. Let's not make it complicated to get my trip approved. And they wanted direct flights. Those were the top of their list as most essential to be included in that travel policy. And more than half of the respondents considered, again, these important, but they also, this is what I thought was interesting, 4 in 10 proposed mandatory vaccinations be required for any business travelers. So again, that, as we all know, is a very hot topic right now. And, you know, what are companies going to do? What are companies' positions going to be? It'll be interesting to see how this all unfolds. But these travelers, you know, again, the statistics show that they thought that that was important and key and critical to traveling for business. And then our lovely face-to-face that we just were talking about a minute ago. Again, virtual meetings have really taken off because obviously we've had no choice and we've had to get in front of each other. We want to see each other. We want to have that interaction. But in virtual meetings have been extremely successful. But again, traveling employees consider client meetings and team building events as the most important to be conducted face-to-face. And I absolutely agree. I had not seen my peers for almost 2 years because our last get-together was December of 2019. And we just recently got together in Dallas. And I can't even express to you how excited we were all to see each other face to face. So again, you know, we're all trying to collaborate, be in alignment. You know, we're all working harder than we've ever worked before. And the ability not to have that human interaction is just not going to continue. So again, virtual meetings are going to find their place because I do think that, you know, and several companies are even looking at that, you know, internal meetings, making them the virtual meetings, but the client meetings, you know, get out there, meet the client. So again, it'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds, but I totally agree with this. The face-to-face, you cannot replace that with virtual meetings. Although it's great to see you guys on Zoom. It's better to see you. And I hope next year we're in a hotel room in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'll be there. And again, the next slide, Dwight, it just really speaks to why the weakness of virtual. Whoop. Yeah, there you go. Oh, there. I'm not sure what's happening there, but anyway.
I'm having an issue.
Yeah, there you go.
It doesn't want to get off that next slide.
Okay, well, in any event, it's just really speaking to what I already talked about. You know, the weakness of the virtual meeting as it relates to client facing and if you're really trying to achieve objectives within your workforce. This next slide, you know, return to office. So again, you know, here we're looking at 33% of the, you know, the folks here are still working remotely. And I think that we all know that. I mean, I can tell you that from personal BCD, we still haven't opened our offices officially. They're still closed. And while we thought we would open them maybe in September, we're now probably looking at January. And I think that that's a continued consistency within a lot of the workforce. And then, you know, another statistic was that 22% of the people that were surveyed are part-time in the office. So I think I've seen some of my own clients where they brought back some of their folks and they alternate days. So you're in the office a couple of days a week and then it shifts and other folks come in. So there's all kinds of combinations happening, you know, within this getting back to office, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Okay, and I'm not sure what, okay. These aren't cool. Maybe we're ahead of ourselves here a little bit. Yeah, okay. That's okay.
Hey, Kathy.
Yeah.
Before we get too
perfect.
much, Kathy, before we get too much further on, there was a question that came up that I think if you don't mind answering now.
Sure.
A question came in that asked, on the slide that talked about, is it important to get back to meetings? The 12% who felt that client meetings were not important, was that an industry specific response or just random across multiple industries?
I think well, I know it was random across multiple industries. So, and I think a lot of that, if you looked at the profile of the respondent and you looked at where they, some of those folks weren't even travelers. So, you know what I mean? And it may be depending upon where they worked and what part of the company, what their role was within the organization. I can't even imagine not thinking that client facing meetings were important. But that's the sales side of me. But yes, I think it had to do with their role within the organization for sure.
Thank you.
Great.
That's good.
Thank you. Thank you.
So again, the future of the workplace and what does that look like? And I think this is going to really play into companies' ability to be flexible. We've proven that this remote thing works. I will say that as an organization, we, even prior to the pandemic, had about 65% of our agent population that were already virtual. Now, I was one of those road warriors. And so obviously the last, as you can imagine, the last 18 months are very challenging for me to sit in front of a computer, 10 or 12 hours a day. Honestly, I thought I was going to go crazy. But the good news is that I was able and have had some business trips. And I've got some ones coming up. So I feel better. But I think it's going to be, so I was one of those, if I wasn't on the road, I was in the office. I like that collaboration, that networking. I would come down to Kim's office and say, hey, Kim, what's happening? But the ability to have that interaction. But again, we've proven that it works. So there's some folks that have gotten adjusted to it. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how companies come back with, will they stay remote or will they do a hybrid approach? Because I think from a recruiting and retention perspective, it's also going to have an impact to companies and how flexible they are with the remote workplace policy. Okay. And then post-pandemic. So again, this kind of leads into what we were talking about, and this is more related to actual travel. And I find it interesting, that 9% said they want to travel for work more than they did before. I think that was too much time at home. I would raise my hand and say that as well. But nonetheless, this just gives you an idea. 6 to 10 would like to travel for work as frequently as they used to before the pandemic. So again, I think things will come back. I'm very confident that it will, but it's just slower than what we anticipated. And I also feel that there's many reasons for that. I think a lot of this, is politically motivated. It doesn't matter what side you're on. It's just so political right now. And I think that, there's folks out there that have, been sick, and it just, we just have to get back though to work. And people need to do what they need to do for themselves, whether that's getting the vaccination or not, and just be safe and take the precautionary measures to ensure that, you stay healthy. But who would have thought that we'd ever be in the situation that we're in right now? It's just mind blowing to me. So bleisure, we all know that was introduced. I think I talked about that maybe, Kim, at one of the last meeting that we had in 2019.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I thought I did. So bleisure travel is here to stay. And again, I think if you think of the demographics of the folks that are traveling, they're, depending on where they're going to destinations where, they're going to spend the weekend. They might go ahead of the meeting or stay after the meeting, but that's here to stay for a laundry list of reasons. I think people have got a lot of pent up desire to get out there. And so I think that if they have the opportunity, that is going to continue to play a role in what we see as the business mix of travel between leisure and business, for sure. And then the next just really talks about, the percentages of the group and how likely they were to extend or go in before, their meeting was scheduled. So to wrap this up, if we take a look at the business traveler's profile, there is no doubt in my mind that it's going to change. Business is going to change. We've already seen some aspects of that. Remote working, it's going to be popular and for some folks, and it's going to be a deal breaker with where they work and where they decide to be employed. We're going to continue to see change, but I have a philosophy and change is an opportunity to make a difference. We need to embrace what is going on right now and proactively take the measures and necessary steps to get us back to as close as, we're never going to be back to where we were, but we can get back to a level of comfort. And we're not just going to survive this pandemic, we are going to thrive after this pandemic. So that's really a wrap for me, but I totally appreciate the opportunity, Kim, to speak with you all today. I would love to take some questions if there's questions.
Great. And thank you, Kathy. That was great. And so everyone knows, we will post this survey on our website. So that should be coming up relatively soon.
Someone wants us to show the last slide.
Oh, good. Dwight, can you go back to that slide? And while we're going back to that, we will open the floor. I didn't have any other questions come through the chat, but would love to open up the floor and you can unmute yourself and ask questions. Oh, here's one that has come in. Lots of road warriors on the planes, I have noticed lately, especially manufacturing type, etc. Does BCD see trending in business travel by segment?
Yes, we do. We absolutely do, because we look at, we do. And I will tell you that manufacturing were, the companies that slowed down, obviously, but those are the ones that we're starting to see pick up. The pharmaceutical companies, they've continued to travel. Some of them essential, but obviously they played a very key role during this pandemic. So they've definitely been traveling. And then essential travel, like, FedEx and UPS and, those types of businesses have continued to travel. So yes, to answer that question, we do look at it via, based on the segment of the industry.
Great. And do you foresee further consolidation in the industry?
I think that there's going to continue to be consolidations, Kim. I just, I don't know to what extent, but we've already seen that in a lot of areas. And, I think it's inevitable. We're going to continue to see some type of consolidation. Absolutely. And then I saw someone had a question about the comment that I made about vaccinations. And that was the individual travel, the respondents, that was their hope that vaccinations would be mandated.
Okay, so, and that's the question on the 4 in 10 mandating. So
yeah.
Okay.
That those folks were hoping that was the direction that it would be mandated. And I think there's a lot of tough decisions that companies have to make, and, who knows how it's going to, the government intervene. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how all this unfolds. But we certainly are in an ever-changing environment, but we have to be optimistic and stay positive. And I don't mean with rose-colored glasses. We have to be realists. But honestly, I do believe that being focused on positive and putting positive energy out there, it only grows from there. Negativity doesn't get us anywhere.
So true. Very well said. Anyone else with questions? Feel free, if you don't want to type it in here, feel free to unmute yourself and ask Kathy directly.
Kathy, I had a question for you. You mentioned, then I want to paraphrase, I guess, that travel wouldn't or may never come back to where, pre, COVID levels. Paraphrasing.
Oh, I think it will. I think it will come back eventually. I just don't see it coming back, by the end of this year or potentially even by the end of 22. I'm not sure that we'll be pre-COVID numbers. For example, everything that we benchmark is 2019. So, a lot of the predictions, and again, I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. I feel that we're going to come back to some level, but I'm not sure that we'll get back 100% of where we were in 19. But I do continue to see upward movement. And I think my personal prediction, nothing to do with, this is Kathy Bedell's 2 cents, based on my portfolio of clients and what I'm seeing, is that I do predict that we'll be back somewhere between 55 and 70% pre-COVID numbers by the end of this year. That's my prediction. And this is just based on what I'm seeing. But it just depends on, there's so many factors that can come into play here, such as the mandate for vaccines. I mean, there's so many other things that can continue to impact this and how quickly it comes back. But I do think people have to get out there. They do have to build their businesses back. They have to be in front of customers. And that's going to dictate a lot of what happens between now and the end of the year.
For me, it seems I remember I first took over the Allscripts travel program after 2008, and which, we cut all travel. And at that time, management was saying, we're never going to go back to travel the way it was. And we traveled more than we traveled before then. But to me, this feels different. And when they're, and my management is saying we're never going to travel the way we did before COVID, and I'm thinking it might be that, and, in terms of your internal meetings. But I don't know that we'll travel like we did. Me going up to Raleigh for a couple of days for internal meetings. I don't know that it'll ever happen again.
Well, and that's what I was sharing with you all about the virtual concept, that the respondents that we surveyed, that's what one of the areas that they thought were that they could do virtual meetings was those internal meetings, but they felt very strongly about the client facing as well as team building and training. Training's another one, I think that, and that's just my opinion, but I think that training is important to be there and to actually experience as you're going through that whatever it is you're training on. You can't do that via Zoom or Teams or whatever. First of all, there's too many distractions. That's been the thing that's driven me the most crazy is, you're on a call and you're having a review with a client and you're getting pinged internally, with all these emails and phone ringing off, got it on mute. But so the distractions have absolutely drove me crazy, where you used to being in a meeting at a customer's location or, in a conference room or, so, yeah.
And then a follow-up, then a second question I had was with regards to mandated vaccinations. Are you seeing that pick up within your portfolio at Allscripts? We were October 1st, if you're traveling, on the company business or going into the office, you have to be fully vaccinated. Come June 1st, it's a requirement for employment with us. Are you seeing that within your?
I've seen a little bit. I've got 3 customers that are mandating it for business travelers. That's where they've taken it thus far. They haven't done anything with the in-office yet because the majority of them aren't back in their offices. And where they had projected that they would be back in their offices by the end of September, they've now moved that to the first quarter of 22.
So, and Kathy, a follow-up question to Dwight's on the mandating. Are you asking, or do you plan to ask air travelers if they prefer that airlines mandate vaccines for passengers for domestic travel?
Do I plan to ask?
Well, does BCD Travel plan to ask? Is that something that
not that I'm aware of at this point? No, not that I'm aware of. No. I mean, we've got a very nice letter from our CEO and in just talking about, the importance of being vaccinated, but nothing, mandating or, just a, nothing mandated at this point. Yes.
Well, and I believe the spirit of this question was in any upcoming surveys, perhaps, is there a plan to ask travelers if they prefer that the airlines they travel on mandate vaccines for passengers, that the airlines mandate it.
Well, I think as we continue to survey, that's a very important question, right?
Right.
Yeah, I see that as being the future. And that's why I thought that this survey was so relevant for now, what's happening right now, and why I wanted to share that with you all, because there's going to be more that comes out as we continue to see, who's mandating and who isn't. Someone had asked also about, I think it was United Airlines that's mandated that their employees have to be vaccinated. As well. So those are the only ones that I've seen. I think it's Delta as well. I'm not sure about American. If they've, I assume they probably have, but I'm not sure. But United has for sure.
Okay.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Questions, anyone? Okay, well, Kathy, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I think this is very enlightening for everyone on the call, and appreciate your time and once again your support with our chapter, yours and BCD Travels as well. So
Absolutely, Kim, our pleasure. And hopefully next year we can be in person.
that's the plan. We'll get it on your calendar soon as possible. So we'll make sure to have you. And everyone else, a reminder that please stay on. We'll do, we change the order of the meeting, and we still have several things to cover that you don't want to miss. So Kathy, all the best. We'll see you soon.
All right. Be safe, guys. Bye-bye.
And thanks again, Kathy. We appreciate having her on, and such an insightful and a helpful presentation, I think, for getting a good consensus of the pulse of travel coming up. But yeah, so just a quick introduction for those of you I missed the beginning of the meeting. I want to welcome all of our guests today, as well as our members. My name is Will Begno. I'm the Vice President and the auction chair of our chapter this year. Just wanted to welcome you guys back to the meeting as well. And a couple of chapter updates we have for you guys. We decided as a board for the best interest of the chapter to continue meetings virtual through the end of the year for now. We wanted to have one or two in person the rest of this year, but just with the evolving situation, we think it's best to keep it virtual for now. So stay tuned for updates on that. But we're optimistic we'll still be able to get our in-person meetings in next year, and hopefully the beginning of the year. So in other news, we also learned this month that Nihal Golastana is leaving our board, and we'd like to thank her for her dedication, for her generous donation of time, and for all of her work on the board over the last couple of years. So thank you, Nihal, for that. And with that, we are going to be having 3 board positions opening up. So some pretty exciting news, some big news for the chapter. We have 3 board positions opening up that we're looking to fill in November. So if you're looking for an additional leadership opportunity, a way to serve your community and serve the travel community of Georgia, we'd love to hear from you. So please send your letter of interest to info@gbta.org. That's info@gbta.org. If you're interested in serving on the board, we'd love to hear from you, and we're excited to get your letter. So going on to the auction. So I'll roll into my other role for the board, the auction chair. So this year we're doing another virtual auction through the application hand bid, which was a huge success last year. We've got some really exciting items and donations from some really key partners and members of our organization. So we've got some really great stuff. It's anywhere from premium airline tickets to premium hotel properties, resort properties, and potential villas this year, which is really exciting. So I would ask you guys and challenge y'all to really put your name in the hat for your company. If you guys have not already donated an item, we'd love to hear from you directly. You guys can reach out to me with any questions on how to donate to the auction. And after this meeting, we'll be sending out the auction commitment letter to each of you, just so you have that as a reminder. So with that, I would like to hand this over to Rick, our sponsorship chair. And Rick, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Will, and good morning to everyone. Just a couple of updates from my side. Number one, special thanks to BCD for being today's sponsor, and to all of our sponsors this year. It's obviously been a challenging year. to say the least. And we thank you very much for your donations, your monies. And along that note, I will be starting my 2022 campaign here in a couple of weeks, contacting first those who were sponsors this year, and looking for some new sponsors to hopefully help us out in 2022. As was mentioned, we hope to go back to in-person meetings sooner rather than later in the new year, and we look forward to getting together with everybody. So please give that some thought. If you are interested in sponsorship, before I talk to you, please reach out to anyone on the board or myself, and happy to set up a call with you. So again, we thank everybody very much. Will, back to you.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. So moving on, just really, this was a really quick, really fast meeting today. I think that's probably going to be great for everyone's schedule, but really just want to thank you guys all for taking the time to join the meeting today. We want to thanks again to Kathy Bedell for joining us and for BCD for sponsoring this Education Month. Guys, please stay tuned for our next education meeting, which is going to be next week, September 23rd with Maria Chevalier. So we're excited about that. So stay tuned for that. We'll send out some more notifications and advertisements for that on our social media platforms. And speaking of those, we would invite you guys to support and join our social media platforms on LinkedIn and Facebook. So go check us out if you guys aren't following that already. We'd love to give you guys updates and some exciting updates on the chapter through that. So in addition to that, just want to remind you guys to fill out the post-meeting survey when you get it after this call is over. It's going to come through your email, and it's really important that we get your feedback, and we use that to really sculpt how we're going to form these meetings and structure the meetings going forward. So we appreciate you guys doing that for us. And then the last thing, we also have an update. We potentially might be putting together something for the convention, depending on how many members we have from our chapter that are going to be at convention. So stay tuned for that.
Hey, Will, but
yeah.
If you don't mind, if I can jump in with a couple of more
Absolutely.
Advertisement pushes for Education Month. So as you mentioned, next Thursday, September 23rd at 2 p.m., we are going to have Maria Chevalier join us. And so Maria, once again, is no stranger to the board. To the chapter. It is exciting to mention that she did recently win one of the seats on the GBTA, the national board. So she'll be joining us next week to talk about some professional development. So how you take your skills that you have and look at transferable skills. She'll do, some of the personal touch on that. And then she's also has a little bonus part to give us on some studies and some data that PredictX has been pulling together. So don't want to miss that. That's 2 p.m., which is a little bit different time for us, but her thought was she wants to do it then. She wasn't available in the morning. And then that way, if people need to go, get the children from the bus stop or whatever, hopefully we'll be able to, you can get that in before then. And then on September 30th, which will be the following Thursday, 10 a.m., we are going to have coffee with Suzanne. So Suzanne Newfong, the president of GBTA, will be joining us. She'll give us an update on what's going on in the association, the industry overall, an update on the conference coming up, the convention coming up, and a little more casual too. We want to everyone bring your cup of coffee or your tea or your Diet Coke or whatever your drink of pleasure is, and join us for that. So both of those are online that you can register for. So go to our website, the georgiagbta.org, and sign up for those and spread the word. We want to get our attendance up and build our membership as well. And then in October, we will have a great session. We're finalizing that and look for details to come out on that next week.
That's awesome.
So back to you.
Thank you, Kim. No, that's really great. And then guys, just recognizing Kim really quickly for putting together such an amazing roster for us and lineup for Education Month. So Second time in our chapter history doing a whole month of education versus a single day. And Kim is rocking it. So we really appreciate you. We're excited to see you guys again next month. And we'll give you back a lot of extra time today. So thank you all for joining us, and be on the lookout for our notification on the next meeting. Thanks, guys.